record on the computer. Okay, all right, so today what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at making Paula Deen biscuits. Now, there's not, recipes for biscuits are all over the place. They have some basic components that are in them, but there's some little finessing differences between each recipe. So find a recipe that's easy for you to make and for you to do. This is not the one that I normally do. I usually do the one in my little Better Homes cookbook, but I decided to do this one today for you, okay? And what we're gonna need in that is we're gonna go ahead and in a large bowl, we're gonna combine flour mixture, and then we're gonna add some milk right into the middle of it. And I did not go ahead and get my milk together, so I'm gonna do that right now. I didn't have any milk that I had already purchased, so I'm just gonna use the hydrated milk. And the way that you put that together is you use 1/3 of a cup of the hydrated milk into 1 scant cup of water. Okay, so 1/3 of a cup to 1 cup of water. So I'm just going to put that dehydrated milk into a measuring cup, and I'm going to fill that up to 1 cup of water. We're only going to need 3/4 of a cup for our recipe. Go ahead and get that together. Got that all ready. And I'm going to get a different measuring cup because I only need 3/4 of a cup of that milk. Okay. So in this particular bowl, we're going to go ahead and measure the flour. And we need 2 cups of all-purpose flour. 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And Paula Deen does something that most Southerners don't do. She adds sugar to the biscuit recipe. My other biscuit recipe does not have sugar in it, but this one does have just a little sweetness in it. And it's not because it's a sweet biscuit, but I think it's to counteract the flavor of the leavening agent. The leavening agent that we're going to use is baking powder, and baking powder generally has alum in it, and alum kind of tastes like a metal, and it's just not a pleasant flavor. And you say, well, Miss Emmons, let's just leave the baking powder out. Well, you can't do that because baking powder is what causes the biscuit to actually rise. And if we don't have the baking powder in it, then our biscuit would just be a little flat cake. And we don't want that. We want it to rise up, and we do that with the baking powder. So the sugar in this, and this is just 1 teaspoon of sugar. So you're writing down the recipe: 2 cups of flour, 1 level teaspoon of sugar. And that's going to counteract the flavor of the alum that is in the baking powder. So we're going to use the baking powder, and for that, we're going to need 1 level tablespoon. This is a lot. See, that's a whole lot of baking powder. 1 tablespoon baking powder. We're then going to use 1 teaspoon of salt. 1 teaspoon of salt. And you notice again that I'm not pouring that over my bowl because I don't want that excess in there. It's 1 teaspoon of salt. And that's all of the dry ingredients that go into this mixture. And I'm going to give it just a little spin around. You can do that with a whisk if you want to get them incorporated. The next thing that you want to do is you want to cut in the fat. You want to cut in the fat. All right, and our fat today that we're going to use, because it's a Paula Deen biscuit, is of course butter or margarine in our case. But you could also substitute shortening. So for our lab that we're going to do, if you have shortening given to you, it's because I'm out of butter, and we're just going to use the 8 tablespoons of, or a half a cup of shortening would work the same way. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that into our dry mixture. And we are going to cut in the fat into the flour. Now there's a couple of different methods of cutting in. Cutting in is a vocabulary word that you need to recognize when you are cooking. This is a pastry blender, and it's very nice with these tines to be able to cut in, and you see the motion that I'm making, cutting in the fat into the flour. You can see that. Or you can use a fork, and the tines of the fork can cut in the fat into the flour. And what you're wanting it to look like is you want it to be kind of sandy looking. You want it should look a little bit like you're at the beach and you are picking up wet sand. That's kind of what that should look like. It should be more that kind of texture. And we're just going to move the bowl around until we get the fat cut in to the flour. Okay, and if it gets over on the side, I'm going to just go ahead and push that back down into the mixture. Okay, and you guys that are in the room, you need to stand up and take a look, see. You can do that. But these clumps are bigger. Right now we still have a whole lot of butter clumps, but you want it to be a little clumpy with the flour. Okay, this is also getting that baking powder incorporated just a little bit more too. Lane, over in the top drawer, would you get me a wooden spoon? I like to work with a wooden spoon too. Okay. So we've got this beautiful mixture now, and you see what I was talking about. Thank you. You see what I was talking about, so that it just kind of looks a little clumpy like sand would look. A little bit more sandy in its texture. Okay. And then now what we want to do is we want to make a little bit of a well down in the bottom, and we're going to pour our milk down into the center of that. Then we want to get the flour incorporated. A lot of people do this. My mother always used her hand, and she would work the flour in to the liquid. I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to use a wooden spoon. I'm not quite as talented at that as my mother was. I make biscuits. There are some people who really make good biscuits. Really make good biscuits. My biscuits are edible. They're good. But there are other people who may make them a little bit better. And what I suggest is that you watch everybody's technique on how to make biscuits and kind of develop your own from that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pour this in the center. And I'm just going to work that around so that it keeps getting wet. Whoop, got it a little over on the side. Got a lot on the side. Oh, good. Good, good. All right, we're just going to keep mixing that in a little bit at a time. Okay, and then we're going to kind of move it around. And when all of it gets moistened, we've made this really nice dough. We're going to take it and form it into a ball, and then we will roll it out. The thing that you need to remember about any baked good is that the baked good will only double in size. So if you roll something out extremely thin, it's only going to double in size. So when you're rolling it out, it is important to leave it nice and thick so that it is still thick when you are finished with it. But you see the dough, it's all moistened. And what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to kind of bring it in together to make sure that we've got it incorporated. There's still some dry particles down here at the bottom we kind of want to bring in. And you don't want to overwork it. You want it to be nice and tender. So you're only going to knead it around about 7 times. Seriously, 7 times. You don't want to overwork biscuit dough. You just want it to be nicely incorporated. And I'm going to use my little rubber scraper here and pull it off the sides. All right. Another thing that students typically will do is when they flour their work surface, they put too much flour on that surface. So we don't want to over flour the work surface. I'll show you what we're going to do. We are going to lightly flour our surface. And we've got our dough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it's starting to get moist. 7. Okay, so I'm going to get just a little bit more flour. And again, you don't want to put too much. You want to make sure that your dough roller doesn't stick to it. And when working with a dough roller, you want to make sure that you're only going in one direction. Okay? Oh, I didn't get a cookie cover. Okay, that glass on the bottom shelf over there is what I want. Okay, so I'm going to take my dough roller, the glass on the shelf. Yep, that's it. Okay, so I'm going to take the dough roller and I'm going to rub a little bit of the all-purpose flour onto it. I'm going to kind of bounce it across the top of my dough. Just set it down. Okay, you just want to kind of lightly bounce it around. And then you want to roll it only in one direction. And you're looking for this dough to still be on the thicker side. So if I want my biscuits to be about an inch in height, I want to roll them about 1/2 inch in thickness. So again, they're only going to do as much as double in size. Okay, so this is about 1/2 inch in thickness. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I'm only going to roll it the one time. I'm then going to take my tray and I'm going to set it over to the side. And there's a couple of rules of thought. When you get those biscuits that are in the cans, like the Grand's Foot biscuits, they will tell you to set the biscuits 2 inches apart. And there's an entire old school theory that if you place them closer together, then as they begin to rise, they will go up rather than out. So we want our biscuits to go up rather than out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut them and I'm going to cluster them together. You notice this is an ungreased pan. Anytime you're baking, you don't really need to grease that pan in order to make those work good. But you see that's about 1/2 inch. So this will probably double in size. So I'm going to start that in the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and set these close to each other. So again, it will rise and then we will tear them off. But if you feel more comfortable setting those apart, again, this is a technique that you want to develop. You want to make biscuits the way that you like them. okay? In order for the biscuits to be nice and pretty, you also don't want to re-roll the dough to be able to keep that nice and pretty across the top. But I don't like to waste dough, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna re-roll it and try to get as much out of this dough as I possibly can. It just won't be a pretty biscuit. When you re-roll the dough, it will actually crack across the top. Those biscuits will come out and look a little bit different. Now, in order to make your biscuits brown across the top, you can give them a milk bath if you want to, or an egg wash across the top. You just kind of scramble up the egg in a bowl, and then just take a brush and brush the top of it with that, or you could put butter on the top. These have butter in them, so you're going to see a little bit of browning, but don't be surprised, especially if you're using the shortening, if your biscuits come out and they're a little more on the white side. So if you want them brown, you're going to have to address that. And here's the last ones that are going to go in. Now, to bake the biscuits, the oven is already preheated. It's preheated to 450 degrees, and biscuits take 12 to 15 minutes. And again, we always do the lesser amount of time, and then we add time as needed. I'm just re-rolling this thing all over the place, aren't I? There we go. And there's always seems to be just a tiny bit of dough that's left. And one of the things that my mother, everything about cooking is about family, and it's about you, and it's about how you grow and how you do things. My mother would always make me what she would call a baby biscuit or two, because I wasn't a big bread eater when I was little. So this is in honor of my mother. I'm going to put a little baby biscuit on here. Each time I make biscuits, that's always what I do. So there's my little baby biscuits. And to keep them from getting overcooked, I'm going to kind of nestle them in there. So anyway, we're going to put those in for 12 minutes, and we're going to enjoy some biscuits and jelly here in just a minute in the classroom. Hope you enjoyed that. Please try these at home for extra credit. Thank you.